athletic, and look how smooth it is. Oh!
Oh my! My!
Just saw ended this wrestler's life. On August 24th, 2005, Chris Candido was competing in a steel cage Tyson match. Less than a minute after the bell rang, Candido's right foot got caught on the mat.
No, that's insane, gang.
Both bones in his lower leg. Chris Candido was unable to stand up and had to be taken out of the match. He underwent immediate surgery, which, while successful, put a huge strain on his body. 4 days after the injury, Candido started to feel ill, and body filled his lungs. By the time he arrived at the hospital, it was too late, and Chris Candido had died at the age of 33. While this next wrestler didn't die, this incident left him completely paralyzed. Hayabusa was a Japanese wrestler widely considered one of the best of all time. He was one of the pioneers of the high-flying, fast-paced style of wrestling, but sadly, this is what would alter his life. In 2001, Hayabusa was competing in what was supposed to be a standard match. After wrestling for about 13 minutes, Hayabusa went for a springboard moonsault. However, he lost his footing and his head slammed violently. The referee, Hayabusa's opponent, and even the fans could tell he didn't land correctly, but didn't realize the severity. Hayabusa's opponent tried to continue the match, but Hayabusa wasn't moving. About a minute after the incident, the match was called off and Hayabusa was taken out of the arena. The injury cracked 2 of Hayabusa's vertebrae in his neck and left him paralyzed, and he was forced to retire. Sadly, Hayabusa would die about 15 years later due to a cerebral hemorrhage. However, about a year before his death, Hayabusa regained strength in his legs and was able to spend the final months of his life standing and walking on his own. The medical staff attended to Hayabusa relatively quickly. This next wrestler wasn't, and it was detrimental to his life. In the 1980s, WWE matches were almost never stopped. Part of this is due to the wrestling culture at the time, and simply WWE and most wrestling companies having very few safety protocols in place. During a non-televised WWE show in 1986, the WWE Tag Team Champions, Dynamite Kid and Davey Boy Smith, were defending their titles against Don Morocco and Bob Orton. During the match, Dynamite Kid jumped over his opponent and got kicked in the back by the other. While it might appear that the kick is what hurt him, it was actually the jump. As Dynamite Kid said in his book, "As I jumped, literally mid-stride, I felt something go in my back." Dynamite was barely able to move, and neither the referee nor Dynamite's opponents knew that he was seriously hurt. The match continued with Dynamite Kid laying on the side of the ring. Finally, once the match was finished, medical staff came out and Dynamite Kid was taken to the hospital. The injury was the beginning of the end of Dynamite's career, and one can only imagine how things could have been different had he gotten medical attention right away. While that was devastating, this next match has the most gruesome injury in wrestling history. Psycho Sid, or Sid Vicious, was a monster, and he was usually the biggest man anytime he was in the ring. Because of this, Sid mainly used big power moves, and he probably should have just stuck to that moveset. However, during WCW's Sin pay-per-view in 2001, backstage personnel pressured Sid Vicious into performing an aerial move from the middle rope. Sid wasn't comfortable doing it, but agreed to anyway, and it was a big mistake. When he hit the move, Sid landed awkwardly, and the impact caused his leg to snap in two. Sid immediately underwent surgery and was later told he would never be able to run again. In the aftermath, Sid had to use a cane just to walk. While it was a long and challenging road, Sid was determined to regain his strength, and he did. In fact, in 2012, he returned to WWE and wrestled one final match for the company. This next incident shows how even if you're not a wrestler, just being in the ring puts you at risk of injury.
I ain't gonna lie, that's why I respect wrestlers so much, bro, because they put their body through. There's so much things that can go wrong when you're wrestling in the ring. And for them to go out there every night and put their body on the line just to entertain the fans and stuff like that, that's amazing. That's why I'm going to be taking wrestlers for granted, man. Shout out to all the wrestlers out there.
In late
y'all doing a hell of a job.
World Championship Wrestling featured a match between Tommy Rich and Mike Rotunda. The referee was Tommy Young, and what should have been a mundane match turned into a disaster. Towards the end of the fight, Rich grabbed Tommy Young and threw him aside. However, Young tripped over Rich's foot, causing his head to smack into the ropes. This was part of the script, and it seemed like everything had gone to plan. However, Young continued to lie motionless, and it slowly became apparent that something was wrong.
Damn. So I'm laying there facing the audience, and I remember hearing this like humming, and I didn't feel any. There was no pain, because from here down, I didn't feel anything. It was like I was looking at my body, but I wasn't in it.
Backstage personnel eventually realized that Tommy wasn't acting, and the wounded referee was carried out of the ring. Yun ended up in surgery that required the doctor to remove his vertebrae. This led to some devastating news.
I mean, he told me, he said, you've got to understand, if you get hit there, you could be quadriplegic. You don't have any protection. And that's when I knew right then and there, brother, it's over. Your career is over.
Unfortunately, this next clip doesn't have a happy ending either. Daphne never made it to WWE, but she made a name for herself in WCW and later TNA. Her look and personality made her stand out, but two incidents would alter her life. At the Bound for Glory pay-per-view in 2009, Daphne was involved in the Monsters Ball match between Abyss and Mick Foley. Daphne's big moment of the match saw her chokeslammed off the ring and through a barbed wire table.
Daphne! Oh my God! No!
Oh my!
Daphne's head collided with the floor and gave her a very serious concussion. Making matters worse is that Daphne did not want to do the spot, but was asked to by Mick Foley. Daphne continued to wrestle after this, but would suffer other severe injuries. Ultimately, she had to quit, but the scars carried from wrestling didn't leave. She felt the effects of her concussion every day, such as bright lights giving her headaches. However, no one would truly know how much pain she was in until it was too late. In September 2021, Daphne went live on her Instagram account where she would say, "I don't want to talk anymore. I want to go to sleep and never wake up." Fans, family, and fellow wrestlers tried to reach her, but they were too late. Daphne was found dead with a gunshot wound to the chest. Before she ended her life, Daphne requested that her brain be donated to CTE testing. I can't imagine how Owen Hart felt during this match. In 1997, Stone Cold Steve Austin was WWE's fastest rising star. Because of this, it was planned for Austin to challenge and defeat the Intercontinental Champion, Owen Hart, at that year's SummerSlam pay-per-view. What should have been a defining moment for Steve Austin ended with him getting paralyzed. While planning the match backstage, Stone Cold suggested that Owen Hart give him a piledriver, which Austin would then kick out of, leading to a big fan reaction. Austin, though, wanted Owen to use the Tombstone piledriver since it was safer. Owen Hart, though, didn't want to use the Undertaker's move and said he was more comfortable using the traditional but more dangerous piledriver. Stone Cold had just feuded with Owen's brother, Bret Hart, who was famous for never injuring any of the wrestlers he worked with. This gave Stone Cold enough confidence to allow Owen Hart to give him a piledriver. Once they were out in the ring, the match was going perfectly. The two had been wrestling for about 15 minutes when it was finally time for the piledriver.
Bro, these moves so dangerous, bro. I'm not gonna lie. That's why you like. That's why you gotta be you gotta know what you're doing in order to. That's why they put you through so much training before you even get to the WWE, because you gotta know what you're doing when you're doing these moves. These moves are absolutely dangerous, and if you do something the wrong way, it could probably injure somebody seriously.
Neck, there was a little bit of a cushion and impact on my thighs. His neck is so vulnerable, it kinked, and he just went numb. I knew right there, I said, there's something wrong. He said, I can't feel my fingers.
Austin had just enough strength to perform a roll-up and end the match. While Stone Cold was able to return to the ring, this injury did shorten his career. This next wrestler, though, sadly lost his life while competing in a match. In 2015, Rey Mysterio was wrestling in a tag team match in Mexico. In the climax of the match, Mysterio had both of his opponents dangling over the middle rope. Rey hit his finisher, the 619, but Perro Aguayo Jr. didn't react. Mysterio broke character to check on Perro, and backstage personnel soon came out. Rey and the other two wrestlers finished the match, but all attention was on Aguayo. The 35-year-old wrestler was rushed to the hospital, where he was sadly pronounced dead. The cause of death was cardiac arrest, which was brought on when he got hit by Rey Mysterio's dropkick. The whiplash after hitting the rope snapped Perro Aguayo Jr.'s neck and led to his death. Rey Mysterio was understandably devastated by this, but Perro's family told him not to feel guilty, and it was in God's hands. Mysterio attended Perro Aguayo Jr.'s funeral, however, he did not wear his mask out of respect. What happened to Aguayo and everyone else in this video was a pure accident, but this next wrestler deliberately tried to kill his opponents. In November 1996, New Jack was wrestling for ECW. He and his tag team partner, Mustafa, were set to take on Devon Dudley and Axel Rotten. However, Rotten couldn't make the show, so Dudley needed a new partner. At that same event, a young wrestler named Eric Kulis, who wrestled as Mass Transit, said he could fill in. When asked if he was trained, Eric lied and said he was. Additionally, despite telling everyone he was 21, he was actually only 17. Due to
17?
his inexperience and young age, Eric got on New Jack's nerves backstage. The 17-year-old also made the mistake of asking New Jack to cut him open during the match. Finally, it was time for the match to begin. Before the bell rang, though, New Jack told Devon Dudley to stay on the outside of the ring, and for a very good reason. The match looked more like an assault than a wrestling contest. Mustafa, and especially New Jack, showed Eric, aka Mass Transit, no mercy. The darkest moment was when New Jack cut Eric open with a surgical scalpel. While Eric had agreed to this, New Jack cut too deeply and severed 2 arteries. At this point, Eric Cool's father began screaming, saying he was only 17. Medics rushed into the ring, and Mass Transit had to be placed on a stretcher. Transit did recover, and his family later sued New Jack. Ultimately, Eric Cool's line about his age, experience, and asking to be cut open allowed New Jack to be acquitted. New Jack himself doubled down on what he did and showed no remorse. Then, years later, New Jack would attempt to kill another wrestler. To see what happened, and if New
Oh my goodness, this New Jack motherfucker, he vicious, ain't he? But we about to get out of here. If y'all enjoyed that reaction video, make sure y'all like, share, and subscribe. Man, RIP to all the wrestlers who sadly lost their life, man. Wrestling is a dangerous sport, man. You just never know what can happen. That's why you gotta be sharp, man, in your skills, because these moves are dangerous. And if you don't perform them the right way, shit can go left. But I'm out of here, man. If y'all enjoyed that reaction video, make sure you hit that like button. Turn on that post notification bell so you can get notified when I drop another video. And I'm out of here, man.